Hello, everyone. I'm back to discuss episode 7 of The Young Pope, a show that I'm rapidly running out of superlatives for because I just love it. There are some episodes that are superior to others, but overall, across the board, this show kind of stands alone in the sense that I don't think I've ever had a TV show that I've been this addicted to that doesn't have some sort of action at the core of it. I mean, even shows like The Wire or The Sopranos, whether Game of Thrones, Westworld, Breaking Bad, you name it. Usually there's violence and or the threat of violence to kind of keep me hooked because I enjoy action, I enjoy adventure, I enjoy all those things. I enjoy thrillers, but I can't remember a show that's purely character driven. I need to clear my throat. But I can't remember a show that's purely character driven that I've enjoyed this much maybe in the 21st century. Now, this episode does have a little bit of violence, and I'll get to that in a bit, but I just want to say that it's starting to occur to me that this show might be my favorite pure drama of the last 20 years. So let's get down to episode 7 and what makes this show so great. So this episode begins with yet another brilliantly hysterical scene with Voyello, who's by far my favorite character in the show. Without Voyello, it would still be a great show, but it wouldn't be anything like what it is because we see Voyello in full soccer regalia listening to the radio as his team plays. And he's walking around in a panic and he's holding his rosary, or does he call it rosary beads or rosary? I know so little about the Catholic Church. I don't even know the proper terminology. At any rate, he's holding it, he's praying, but you can tell his emotions are just overwhelming, especially as he hears on the radio that his team is not doing well, and he just slowly walks out of the room. And we see that on his jersey it has his name on it and the number 1. And I just feel like without any dialogue of any kind, this scene captures everything that I know and love about the great character of Voyello. So yeah, I just can't get enough of that guy. And then we see that while in previous episodes he claimed that he got rid of all the pictures with evidence of Lenny touching Esther's breasts, even though it was under a different context than what the pictures might suggest, he still has a copy. And he's back to scheming for how to get Lenny to resign so that either he or Spencer or someone else can become the new pope. And it seems like he's got some support on this because everything that the church does is kind of screeching to a halt. They don't do anything anymore. They don't have any activities. They don't have any outreach. They don't help the poor. They just kind of have retreated inward to the point where they are this small, diminishing mystery, and none of Lenny's endeavors or ideas seem to be paying any dividends that he, at least not along the timetable that he had anticipated. I mean, Spencer is not surprised because Spencer says, look, Lenny wants to take the church back to the very beginning when all the Vatican was gone and it was just Peter's tomb, but Spencer seems more than ready and willing to step back into the role of the Pope were to be offered to him. But the big curveball this episode is when a piece of pipe arrives by the mail, and it's a piece of pipe that belongs to the pipe that was given to Lenny by his parents when he was first dropped off at the orphanage. And he assumes that his parents are now trying to reach out to him. He uses his resources to arrange a meeting or to hunt down the people that sent it, and he's absolutely beside himself and petrified with who we might meet when they arrive, and he has all these dreams about smelling his parents as a kid and that sort of thing. You can tell just the fact that he's an orphan still is really weighing heavily on him. Another curveball this episode is that Tommaso has turned against Lenny. Tommaso believes that Lenny no longer believes in God, therefore he's no longer willing to inform about anything, and he's started to become an informant against Lenny. My favorite scene of this episode was absolutely wild. Dusolier is at a party and he's just wasted. He feels this horrible self-loathing and hate and loneliness over the fact that this young boy from Spain killed himself and he couldn't become a priest, and he's essentially drinking away his woes. And he goes into the restroom and he's looking at himself in the mirror and he's calling himself a murderer. But as he opens his door, we have this scene that's almost like a sexual version of some of the scenes we saw in the horror movie It Follows, where the camera kind of backs up and we see this presence marching toward him, and he backs up almost in terror against the wall. And this strikingly beautiful hostess of the party, who's an older woman, she's probably late 40s, early 50s, but very, very wealthy, very healthy and well built, very full of vitality. She steps in and closes the door behind him and essentially asks, did you come to see me? And starts just stripping off her clothes, and she looks incredible. And Dusolier starts kind of laughing and doesn't know how to respond, and she turns around and, makes it abundantly clear that he can have his way with her if he were to choose to, and he turns her down. But there's something just so carnal and brazen and honest about the way this woman just pounces when she sees an opportunity to do so. Dussolier continues to get completely trashed, basically almost passes out in the pool looking for his rosary, and as he's being driven home back to the Vatican, the guy who's driving him essentially tries to rape him in his sleep. I mean, Dussolier is just a mess in this. He finally tells Lenny that he's had enough and he's heading back to Honduras because that's where he feels like it's most home to him. But when he arrives at the airport, his girlfriend or mistress, who he used to have the menage a trois with, meets him there at the airport, and all she says is, he knows. Dussolier gets into the car with her. We quickly learn that she's married to a narco. Not only a narco, but one of the most powerful drug lords in all of Honduras. And the guy's torn because on one hand, he feels like, as a good Catholic, he should forgive Dussolier for having slept with his wife. But as a businessman, he's got certain rules that he has to follow. And we quickly learn that, spoiler alert, Dussolier is shot through the gut and dropped on the side of a dirt road. And perhaps that is the last we're going to see of him. I don't know if there's going to be some miracle or divine intervention. I doubt it. I have a feeling Dussolier is done. So it was a pretty brutal dose of violence in reality in what is otherwise just a normal kind of compelling drama where people might have confrontations via words, but very rarely with gunshots. So the climax of this episode essentially when the parents of Lenny arrive. They come in, they tell the story about when, where, and how they decided to send the piece of the pipe to him because they'd heard that he'd been hanging on to his piece for the whole time he was at the orphanage. And Lenny tells him not to speak, and he steps up and he smells them. He smells them long and hard, identifies them as charlatans, and sends them on their way, and then immediately sets about trying to find out who in his organization was responsible for this charade. And he's furious, and no one will cooperate with him. No one will confess or to give him any information. When Lenny asks Voyello about whether or not they as the church are responsible for killing the poor Spanish boy who wanted to be a priest, Voyello tells him, no, we are not responsible. You are responsible. So Lenny's feeling very, very low, and he's feeling like he's a complete failure. He's feeling as if he probably needs to resign as a pope. And immediately all the older guys start getting together and getting organized and figuring out who's going to possibly take the spot. We see Michael Spencer practicing and having these fantasies in his head, like in front of I think it's called St. Peter's Square, with thousands in attendance, and you can tell he's ready for his moment to achieve rock star status. But before he resigns, Lenny goes to speak to Sister Mary, and she admits that she arranged the charade. He thanks her because he says for a brief shining moment, he kind of forgot what it was like to be an orphan, or he felt complete again. I have a feeling Lenny is not going to resign because they got a season 2 coming called The Young Pope. So you can't have it called The Young Pope if Michael Spencer is the Pope. So usually I don't really make predictions with this kind of show, but my prediction is Lenny is not going to resign and Michael Spencer's going to be pissed. But we'll have to wait for episode 8 to see what happens. But great episode. Not my favorite episode, but a great episode. I love the show, and I'm going to be very sad when season 1 draws to a close. So thank you so much for watching this video. Hope you're enjoying The Young Pope. If you're not watching The Young Pope, why are you watching this video? Go watch Young Pope. And give me a shout on Twitter at Colbrax if you want to talk about any sort of multimedia of any kind. And if you want to listen to Wrong Reel, my podcast about film, I've got a link down in the show notes below to where you can find it on iTunes. And hope you enjoyed this. Please subscribe, and I will talk to y'all soon. So long.